we'll go ahead and get started in just a minute or two. We'll give you guys time to fill out the barcode. Um, yeah. Hello, welcome. Go ahead. If you're an SDSU student, you can go ahead and scan the barcode in order to get a chance to win a one of two Starbucks gift cards. We're gonna go ahead and get started in just a minute. Okay, we can go ahead and get started now. First, I want to introduce myself. My name is Randy Collado. I am currently serving as the finance executive, and I want to go ahead and thank all of you guys to coming out to the second part of this event. And I'm gonna go ahead and state the LSU purpose. Our purpose is to unite, educate, and empower Latinx students through the celebration of culture and the promotion of positivity, mentorship, purpose, and the awareness in all that we do. Next, we'll go ahead and present the Kumeyaay land acknowledgement.
Hoka, Noshkana Nachihi. I'm the tribal liaison of San Diego State University, and I'm now going to read the Kumeyaay land acknowledgement. We stand upon a land that carries the footsteps of millennia of Kumeyaay people. We are a people whose traditional lifeways intertwine with a worldview of earth and sky. In a community of living beings, this land is part of a relationship that has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced the Kumeyaay people to the present day. It is part of a worldview founded in the harmony of the cycles of the sky and the balance in the forces of life. But the Kumeyaay, red and black, represent the balance of those forces that provide for harmony within our bodies, as well as the world around us. As students, faculty, staff, and alumni of San Diego State University, we acknowledge this legacy from the Kumeyaay. We promote this balance in life as we pursue our goals of knowledge and understanding. We find inspiration in the Kumeyaay spirit to open our minds and hearts. It is a legacy of the red and black. And it's a land of the Kumeyaay. Here, my heart is good. In your womb, in your past.
Perfect. That being said, I'm gonna go ahead and pass the stage to our brilliant speaker, Cindy Zuniga-Sanchez.
Thank you, Randy, and thank you to the students of LSU for inviting me once again. I have hopefully another interesting workshop. Today is really going to be all about debt and credit. Okay, so I want you all to jot down anything that you hear that you may think like, oh, okay, I want to ask her about that. But don't feel compelled to write down notes per se, because after all of this is over, I'm actually going to be sending Nora the presentation from Monday and the workbook that I distributed then, as well as today. Okay, so before we get started, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing that I did last time, which is to send all of you the workbook for today via the chat. Okay, so let me just go ahead and do that, and then we can get started. All right, so if you'll click that document, just make sure you go ahead and don't work in that specific document. Make a copy of it and work in the copy because the copy ensures that that's private to you, right? We want to make sure that you keep your personal information private. So just go ahead and make a copy of that sheet and then rename it, you know, with your name and whatnot, so that you can save that on your computer. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen so that we can get started.
And then, Cindy, I just want to make sure, is it okay if we start recording now?
Oh, of course, yes.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Yes, yes. All right, everyone. So once again, in case you weren't here on Monday, I am Cindy Zuniga-Sanchez, the founder of Zero-Based Budget Coaching, LLC, a personal finance coaching business that I started. Really, I started it because of how much debt I had. And we're going to get into that. We're going to get into the nitty gritty, into my numbers, and the exact 4-step process that I used to pay off $215,000 of debt. So let's go ahead and dive into today's agenda, okay? So we're gonna talk about my journey to debt freedom. And I think it's really important when you understand someone's motivation for getting out of debt, because you all will have a motivation to get out of whatever kind of debt you may have in life, right? If you don't have any right now, amazing. But if you decide to go to grad school, maybe you'll have to take out debt. You know, if you're in grad school, then, you know, chances are pretty high that maybe you have some kind of debt. Maybe you have credit card debt. You know, maybe down the future, you'll stumble upon credit card debt. It is unfortunately a very common one that people have. And so I think that it's important to just first and foremost understand the why, right? And so we're going to talk a little bit about my journey. Then we're going to talk about the exact 4-step process that I used to get out of debt. And this is going to be really, no matter who you are, no matter how much debt you have or will have, you can use this 4-step process along with the workbook that accompanies this presentation to help you create a written plan to get out of debt, okay? And then we're gonna, so that's gonna be probably like the first half of the presentation. Then we're gonna go into using credit responsibly, okay? We're gonna go into pretty high level concepts, but I think it's really important to start this conversation of how do we use credit responsibly, because unfortunately, it's very, very common for young adults, especially college students, to very quickly mess up their credit simply because no one ever taught them proper credit management. Okay. And then, of course, at the end, I'm going to go ahead and reserve at least 30 minutes, like last time, for Q&A, because I think in the Q&A is when a lot of discussion gets to happen and reinforcement of these principles occurs. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about my journey. All right. So I mentioned to you all on Monday, if you weren't here on Monday, I'll quickly recap a little bit about myself. I was born and raised in the Bronx, New York City. My parents are both immigrants from Latin America, and I didn't grow up with much financial literacy at all. That wasn't the focus of my parents, you know, for me and my 2 sisters. Really, their focus was making sure that we were, you know, well fed and we had a good education. And so speaking about education, you know, I can't tell my debt story without noting why I got into so much debt. And so my first part of my debt was my student loan from undergrad. And I attended Stony Brook University, which is a public university here in New York. And the reason why I highlight that it's a public university is because it's a lot cheaper than a private school. So, you know, for example, my husband went to NYU. NYU is obviously an extremely prestigious school in the country. It's also extremely expensive. He was fortunate enough that he got some good scholarship money, but some people aren't as fortunate, right? So those are all things to, you know, to take into consideration. So I didn't graduate college with that much debt, but law school is where I graduated with most of my debt. Okay, so let's break it down. So I graduated law school with $215,000 of debt back in 2015. And this is my exact breakdown of my debt. So you'll see 90% of it was law school. Okay, so if any of you are thinking about going into law school, these are real numbers. Like this is the reality of the situation. A lot of people will ask me, well, Cindy, do you regret that? Do you regret all of that debt that you took out? And the truth is that I don't. And the reason why I don't is because otherwise I wouldn't have become an attorney, right? Like point blank, that's just the truth, right? I would not be a lawyer if I didn't go to law school and I needed to take out debt to go to law school. So that was 90% of my debt. 5%, like I said, was from my undergrad, and another 5% was from credit card debt. So I know 5% doesn't sound like a lot, but my total debt was about $12,000 just on credit cards. And that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money to have on credit cards because of how interest grows, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Okay. So what was the moment? A lot of people will ask me, Cindy, what was the moment when you decided you just needed to change things? You needed to, just start creating this plan and this budget and everything like that. Like, how did all of this start? Zero-based budget, your business, everything. This was my aha moment. You see, when I graduated law school in 2015, you will see that when you graduate school, you're typically given about 6 months of a grace period. Basically, you don't need to pay back your loans in those 6 months. Once those 6 months are over, you have to start repaying your debt. And so I had to start repaying my debt in 2016, January 2016, and I did. And my minimum payment was $2,000. That was my minimum payment. That was more than my rent. Okay, so it was more than any expense that I had. $2,000 minimum monthly payment. Imagine that. That's like, for a lot of people, that's like their mortgage, right? And I did that, and I did it for 12 months. So if we do some quick math, $2,000 minimum payment times 12 months is $24,000, right? So in my first year of repaying my debt, I did it the way that the government was telling me to do it, right? Like I didn't know any better. I was just paying off my debt the way they said. And I realized that at the end of the year, when I looked at my statement, you see, I hadn't been looking at my statement throughout the year. I had just been doing what they told me to. They told me to pay the minimum payment. And so I thought I was doing the right thing, right? At the end of the first year, I realized that of the $24,000 that I paid to my student loans, $20,000 went to the interest and only $4,000 went to the principal. So only $4,000 went to what I was actually, the actual debt that I took out. And $20,000 instead went to interest. That was the moment where I realized, if I don't create a plan, I'm never going to get out of debt. I'm going to be stuck in this forever. And so I need to educate myself. I need to learn about money. Ever since I was in college, I had always told myself, like, Cindy, you'll learn about money one day. You'll get better about money one day. One day you'll learn about investing and, all these things. And it wasn't until at this point, I was 27. Yeah, I guess I was 27 years old when I realized, okay, I actually need to learn about money, because otherwise I'm going to have debt for the rest of my life. So that was my aha moment. So now I want to go through with you for the next half an hour of the 4 steps towards debt freedom. Okay. And this is going to be no matter where you are on your journey. So whether you have debt, whether you don't have debt, this is the resource. Okay. This is the exact process that I want all of you to use to get out of debt. And you'll realize that the first 2 steps we actually already covered on Monday. All right, so we're not going to spend too much time on the first 2 steps, and you'll see that in your workbook. But I want to cover them just quickly, for those that maybe weren't with us on Monday, and let's dive into them. So we'll also refresh your memories. Okay, so remember, step 1. Okay, step 1 is going to be to gather your numbers. Step 1, all right, which is your 4 categories. Remember how I taught you that on Monday, that we need everyone and anyone needs to have their 4 categories, which is income, savings, expenses, and your monthly debt payments. You need to understand what your 4 numbers are, because trust me when I say most people don't. If you ask a random person, hey, do you know how much you spent in total last month? They're going to say, no, not at all. If you ask them, how much did you save last month? Maybe they'll have an answer for you, because maybe they decided to save $50 once the month ended. But the truth is that most people just don't know these numbers. Okay, so you already know what to do with this, right? We're gonna go ahead and you can plug them into that first tab in your workbook, all right? Because that's gonna be, that's honestly, that's the first step, right? You need to know what you're working with here. Otherwise, you're not gonna make any progress, all right? Here's the other piece though, and this is the piece that a lot of people, they're completely clueless on. And I don't blame anyone. It's because, I mean, again, these aren't things that are taught to us, right? But when it comes to your debt, so whether you have student loans, credit card debt, a car loan, medical debt, a personal loan, whatever debt you have, you need to get these 4 pieces of information, no matter the debt. Okay. And again, you can plug in this information in your workbook. You need to know what kind of debt it is. So for example, your Chase credit card, your Capital One credit card, your federal student loan, your private student loan, whatever it is, get that information. Do not wait. If you're in school right now, please do not wait until graduation to do this. Know your numbers. You should know this information. It might be ugly, right? It's definitely ugly, but it's important information to know. So write down what kind of debt it is, right? Give it a name. Step number 2 is you need to know the balance. What's the total amount of money that you owe? Is it $25,000? Is it $5,000? Is it $200? Whatever the number is, write it down. Next is going to be the interest rate. Okay. The interest rate is the fee. Okay. I'm going to say that again. The interest rate is the percentage of the fee that you are going to have to pay the lender. You see, this is a really important thing that a lot of people just honestly do not understand. And that is the difference between principal and interest. See, the principal is how much debt you take out, right? So let's say you sign on a student loan for $10,000. Your principal is $10,000, right? Like that's how much was given to you. That's how much you borrowed. But that's not how much you're going to pay back. You have to pay back the principal plus interest. Okay? And so the interest rate is going to tell you what that fee is that you're going to have to pay to the bank, to the student loan lender, whomever it is. That's what it's going to tell you that. Okay. And a lot of people just don't know that information. I'll share with you guys a quick story. One time when I first started this whole business, so I'm not sure if I mentioned it earlier, and I'm actually not sure if I mentioned it on Monday. I didn't plug my Instagram account, but it's at Zero Based Budget. That's my Instagram account. Make sure you're following me on there. And when I first started my Instagram account and I made it public, because I actually had it anonymous at first, like I didn't want anyone to find me because I was embarrassed by the whole thing. I was like, I basically treated it as like a debt diary. That was what Zero Based Budget started as. Like I was writing like how much debt I had and how much I was paying off. I had a really good friend of mine from high school. She texted me and she was like, "Hey, Cindy, can I ask you a question?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. What's up?" And she was like, "It's actually a really embarrassing question. So please don't judge me." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever. Go for it." And she said, "What's APR?" And I was like, "Okay, yeah. So that's for your credit card. Are you talking about your credit card?" And she was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Well, that's the annual percentage rate, which is the interest rate. It's the same thing as the interest rate that they're charging you for having a credit card." And I was like, "Do you know what your interest rate is?" And she was like, "No, I have no idea." And I was like, "Okay, like screenshot your credit card statement and I'll walk you through it." And I walked her through her credit card statement. And I was like, "See that number?" And I think it was something like 28%. I was like, "That's your interest rate." I think she had like a TJ Maxx credit card or something like that. 28%. Now let's step back and do some math. A 28% interest rate means that for every $100, check it out, $100, for every $100 that she spent, every year she was paying back the credit card company about $28 for every $100. So if it was $1,000, $280. Do you see how quickly like interest can be just something so massive and so burdensome? And there was power when I walked through her credit card statement and showed her that's your interest rate. So if any of you have credit cards right now, okay, I know I sure did when I was in college. I think I had like 2. And we'll talk more about credit cards later. But if any of you have credit cards, please know what your interest rate is. Oh my goodness, please go to your credit card statement, look at where it says APR and write that and plug it into the workbook, okay? And so the last piece of information that you're gonna want is your minimum payment. And that's pretty self-explanatory. That's just the payment that you're required to make every month on your debt, okay? So make sure you write that down. All right, so now step 2 is going to be to create a budget, no surprise here, and prioritize your emergency funds. Now, this is gonna look very familiar to you all, right? Because we did this on Monday, but let's just recap for maybe those that weren't there, or maybe you weren't tuning in, right? Let's just recap that we want to make sure we create a zero-based budget, right? And that's because we want to understand exactly where our money is going. Like, where is your money going? Do you know what it's doing right now? If you don't have control over your money, and your money will control you. You don't want to do that. You want to have control over your money, okay? So you want to make sure that you create a zero-based budget, because the budget is really going to allow you to see, oh, okay, like this is how much debt I have. This is how much this is how much that, okay? You want to go ahead and plug in your numbers to the zero-based budget, okay? But you also want to make sure, all right, let's go back really quick, okay? We're prioritizing the emergency fund. Remember what I told you guys on Monday, right? Step 1 is $1,000. We need $1,000 in that emergency fund. Step 2 is we need enough money at least to cover 1 month, okay? 1 month of your necessary living expenses, like your rent, your groceries, things like that. Step number 3 is your 3 to 6 months of emergency funds, okay? So until you have that, until you're at step 3, you need to make sure that you're including the emergency fund in the budget. Even if in 1 month, all you can do is $100, $50, do it. Do it. Make sure that look, it's the first item, right? Right after income, it's the first item, because that's how important it is, okay? Remember that your emergency fund is your financial cushion, right? For when things go wrong. But the other reason why it's so important, and I want you all to pay attention to this part, is that it's going to protect you from having to take on more debt. You see that, right? Because when an emergency happens, if you have the money in your bank account, you're not going to swipe your credit card. You're going to be able to pay for it in cash. Oh, because, well, something happened. So we're avoiding debt because we already have debt to pay off. So it would be counterintuitive if we just continue to take off debt while we're trying to pay it off, right? It's kind of like the whole thing that you're like digging yourself in a deeper hole, right? That you're trying to get out of. You won't be able to get out of it, right? And that's not me trying to be pessimistic. It's the reality of things, right? Like that's just how math and time work, is that if you keep on swiping and incurring debt, it's going to be much more difficult to actually carry out this plan, okay? So the first steps we went through pretty quickly, right? Because we already knew those steps, right? The first step was make sure that you have your budget. And then that's the first one, the first one is to make sure you gather your numbers, make sure you know them, right? I also like to say, call it, confronting your numbers. They can be really, really scary, but really important to do. It includes your income, your expenses, your savings, and of course, the specific information on your debt, all right? You can fill that all out in the workbook. And then, step number 2 is gonna be, of course, the budget. But now step number 3 is where we get to the nitty gritty, okay? Because you're like, all right, Cindy, I have all the information you told me. I got all the numbers. What's next, all right? Now we need to understand how much additionally we can pay towards our debt. You see, this is probably the biggest lesson that I learned in paying off all that debt, was that additional payments make the biggest impact. Okay, and that should be obvious, right? Like, of course, if you pay off more to your debt, you're going to see faster, getting yourself out of debt much quicker, sure. But I'm going to show you guys in an example soon exactly the impact that that can have. All right. So you need to first think about it as you have to kind of come to terms with the fact that the minimum payment is not enough. All right. I'm going to repeat that. The minimum payment is not enough. It's not. Let's think about it for a second. Why would they want you to get out of debt? Why would these credit card companies want you to get out of debt? They're charging you every month. You're paying them every month. Of course, they don't want you to get out of debt. It's in their best interest to stay in debt, right? Because that's how, exactly, yeah, Jen just commented, that's how they stay in business. Duh, right? That's how they're able to make billions of dollars. It's because of us. And so we need to think about it and say, wait, hold on. So if the minimum payment's not enough, well, then what? Additional payments. That's it. That's the answer. And so to determine that, how much can I additionally pay to my debt? You're going to use your budget. Okay. So your budget is going to tell you, it will tell you, and I'm going to show you in the next example, exactly how much you can throw to the debt. And, some people might say, well, Cindy, what are other ways that you did it? Like when you were paying off, girl, you paid off like over $200,000 of debt. Like, how were you doing that? And here's how. My bonuses from work, I send them to my debt. I got my bonuses. And by the way, in case any of you, I certainly did not know this until I was like, I don't know, 27 or 28 or something when I got my first bonus. Bonuses are taxed at a higher rate, and it winds up working out in the end. It's not like they just tax your bonus at a higher rate because they feel like it. But bonuses, at least for me, are typically taxed at about 50%. All right. So I know you all live in California. So California is a very, very high tax state. I think California comes first and then New York is after. So I do not envy you guys. Obviously, your taxes are quite high, but so are ours. Here in New York City, our taxes are, disrespectful. They're just way too high. But anyways, what I would do is I would get my bonus. New York and the federal government would take half of my money because that's just how it goes. And I would take that money and I would throw it to my debt. That's it. Salary increases. Let's talk about lifestyle inflation. Have any of you heard that term, lifestyle inflation? Let me show you what it looks like. This is what it looks like. It looks like you get your first real job and it pays, I don't know, let's say $60,000. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm making $60,000. This is great. But guess what? You live in California. I live in New York City. $60,000 it's good money. Right? It's about the median income for households in the United States, sure, but living in very high cost of living areas, it doesn't go quite as far, right? But you make it work, you pay off all your bills. And then you get a raise, and your raise is for $70,000. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. Like I got a $10,000 raise. And this is what happens. You spend the $10,000. So you're back at square one. That's called lifestyle inflation. The person then gets the $90,000 a year job, the $100,000 a year job. Okay. But they spend that money. So guess what? It doesn't mean you're getting any richer. You're not. You're just making more money, but you're not actually building wealth because now that you're not making 60K anymore, you're making 100K. Well, of course, then Cindy, like I deserve the nicer car, right? And the nicer car is, let's say, $25,000, $30,000, and well, Cindy, but I also deserve the nicer apartment. And so now you have a nicer apartment, which is more rent. Or maybe you now decide to buy a house. Look, nothing wrong with all of these things that I'm telling you guys. There's nothing wrong with any of this, right? Like these are things that you do when you adult. But keep in mind that lifestyle inflation is a very real thing that we just can't really avoid sometimes, but sometimes you can. And if you can, I want you to take those salary increases and I want you to be smart about it. and I want you to throw it to a financial goal. Here, the financial goal is paying off debt, so that's where we're going to throw it. Okay. I also have another point, which is the 3 paycheck months. So if you are paid every other week, that means you get paid biweekly. That means that you would basically have 2 months in the year where you get a 3rd paycheck. Okay, right? Because you would get at the very top of the month, the middle of the month, and at the very end of the month. That happens 2 times a year. So I used to throw those paychecks to my debt. Okay. If you don't have anything extra, if you're like Cindy, like you're assuming that I have money left over in this budget that I'm creating, right? And all of you should be looking at your budgets right now, right? Like we want to make sure that we're looking at like how much do we have to work with. If there's nothing extra, remember what I told you all on Monday, there's only 2 ways to change that. Mathematically, there's only 2 things that you can do. You either lower your expenses or you increase your income. Increase your income. And in the workbook, you will see on the last tab, there's a tab that says resources. I linked to a blog, which is of a friend of mine who runs she has an excellent podcast called the Yo Quiero Dinero podcast. It's focused on specifically Latinas and just like how to empower Latina women in their finances, but really anyone go check her out because she's great. She has a lot of content on side hustles, like ways to make extra income. Like she's like the side hustle queen. So I definitely recommend all of you looking into her content. It's on the resources tab of the workbook. Okay. All right. So let's apply this, right? This concept of, all right, applying the additional payment. What could that look like? Well, let's look at this budget on the screen right now. Okay. This is a person that has a pretty good job, right? They're making pretty good money. Now, remember that the money part isn't just what's important, like the income part, right? It's going to be really how they break down their budget. So this person is making, like I said, pretty good money. Let's say they live in California, right? High cost of living city area, let's say, I don't know, LA or something, or San Diego, or, whatever city you'd like. And they make $2,500 per paycheck. Okay, they get paid twice a month. And so the total income is going to be $5,000. Remember, that's where we start with the zero-based budget. And then this person is breaking down the money as follows, right? Towards savings and investing, basically like the wealth building goals, the purple goals, that's $800 they're designating to it. Their housing is kind of high, right? $1,800. But again, that's just rent is extremely high. The idea would be that, especially if you're in school and you're planning on maybe getting a master's or whatever it may be, I highly recommend roommates. You might think about, it's like, oh, Cindy, I don't want a roommate. No. Get yourself a roommate as much as possible. And, you don't have to have a roommate forever, but roommates are a really effective way to bring down your costs. Okay. But let's say this person doesn't have a roommate. Let's say they have a cute little studio in California, or I don't know if studios are really a thing over there. They're a big thing over here in New York City, except that our studios are like literally the size of like shoe boxes, but whatever. And then this is how she spends the rest of her money. But you'll see that when we do all of this, right? Look at her student loan payment, guys. I mean, look, let's just say she got a master's. And so that's why she has a really good income, right? She has a good degree, but look at her minimum payment. It's $1,000. It's a lot of money, but it's real. It's real, okay? Like if you take out, I think it's something like, I forgot last time I checked, I think it's something like for every, don't quote me on this, but I think it's that for every $75,000 of debt that you take out, you should expect at least a $1,000 minimum payment for every 75K that you take out. I think it's something like that. We can run the numbers later. I'll show you how to do that. But yeah, so she needed to take out $75,000 for her student loans for her master program. And she did. And now her minimum payment is $1,000. But when we do all of this, her leftover is $400, right? And so the $400 is what she could apply in extra to her debt, okay? And so let's look at this now, all right? I want us to look at this. what is the impact of making just an additional $100 payment? Because you're probably like, Cindy, $400 to throw extra to my debt? I don't know about that. Like, I don't know if I have that. All right, well, let's look at $100. Let's just look at $100. At the top, this is someone that graduated college. Okay, and they graduated college with the average debt. The average debt, I think, is actually like 33,000, but for illustration purposes, I've put 30,000. Okay, 30,000. And let's say their interest rate is about 7%, give or take, right? Ideally, if it's from undergrad, they should be more like 4 to 5%. Higher education, well, like, you know, master's programs and whatnot will have much higher interest rate. Just so that you all know, my interest rate was like 9% on my law school loans, which was awful. Right now they're at 0%, but that's only through September. Well, unless the president extends it. Let's hope he does, but if he doesn't, I mean, it is what it is. So at the top part, we have $30,000 loan balance, 7% interest rate. Okay, their minimum payment, everyone, check it out. Their minimum payment is $500. That's their minimum payment that their, you know, like student loan provider told them about, okay? $500. So they're making their $500 payment. They will pay off their debt in 75 months. I want you to look at the principal versus interest breakdown. Please make sure you look at that right now, because that's going to be really important. The principal they're paying, it, you know, what they wind up paying back is about $30,000. The interest is $7,000. So the total amount that they wind up paying back is about $37,000, a little over that. And it's going to take them 75 months. Okay, 75 months to pay that off. Now, this person says, Cindy, 75 months, that's a lot, you know, and $7,000 of interest. Is there anything that I can do to like pay it off quicker? Yes, the answer is yes. And the answer is in the second half of the document there, okay? And it's throw an extra $100 to your debt. Everyone, let's look at the impact that has. The impact that it has is that she goes from paying off her debt in 75 months to 60 months. We just shaved off 15 months by making just an extra $100 payment. That's it. An extra $100 payment shortens her time period by 15 months, and she saves about $1,500 in interest. That's a lot of money, guys. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of time. $1,500, you know what you could do with that? You could go take a nice little trip, go to the Caribbean, go somewhere, right? 15 months of not having to make those payments, that's great. So when people ask me, Cindy, what was your secret? Like, how do you do it? It's making a minimum payment, making additional payments, not just the minimum. That was my secret. I threw those additional payments, which just started like knocking it out. Like, I mean, it was dramatic. It was dramatic. Okay. So I want to show you all a quick tool. All right. So let me get out of this really quickly. I'm going to show you all a quick tool that is linked, by the way, just so that you know, it is linked in your workbook. Okay. And it's called the Credit Karma Debt Repayment Calculator. I want to do this really quick with you all just for demonstration purposes, but I want to encourage you to play around with it as well. Okay. Like, use this. This is for you for a reason. Okay. So use this. So I'm going to go to it now. So sometimes you might ask, well, Cindy, like, how much, is there a way to calculate like how much debt I would have if I swiped my credit card and bought like $1,000 worth of stuff? And what if the minimum payment was this? And what if the additional payment was that? Like, how do I figure all that out? Here, this is the tool. Okay. So let's do credit cards, or let's do a credit card one. We're going to talk a lot about credit cards later, but I want to do a credit card one because I had credit card debt in college. Okay. So let's pretend that, sorry, one second. All right, let's pretend that you owe, I don't know, let's do like $2,200 that you owe on this credit card. Let's say that, you know, let's say it's a store card. store cards are the worst because store cards have the highest interest rate. And let's say that they suckered you in at, I don't know, a popular one is Victoria's Secret. Another one is Macy's. Those are like really, there's just super popular store cards. Look, I actually have 2 store cards. I'll tell you guys why a little bit later and kind of like my trick around them. But they have horrible interest rates. So let's pretend that this store card has a 27% interest rate, okay? And let's say your the payment that they require you to have to make, I'm sorry, is only like $40, right? That's the minimum payment. So let's look at that, okay? Oh, it says your expected minimum payment is way too low. So let's pretend, all right, so the calculator is even telling me that's way too low of a payment, which is really bad because that's what a lot of stores will charge you. Like they'll charge you only like $40 of a minimum payment. And even the calculator is telling me that that's like way too low, okay? So here we go. So if you make a $90 payment, okay, on this card, it's gonna take you 3 years to pay it off. That is assuming you never, hear me out. This assumes that you never put anything extra on this card. And we all know how that goes, right? We pay it off, then we add a little something extra. Then we pay it off, then we add a little something more. So it's not gonna take you it's not gonna take you 36 months. It's gonna take you like 6 years maybe to get out of a little dumb $2,200 credit card that you're like, this is ridiculous. Now let's look at the impact of, instead of a $90 payment, a $200 payment. So check it out. Check this out right here. This is how much we're gonna pay in interest. You're gonna wind up paying in 3 years about half of the amount that you even took out, which was about $1,000 just in interest. And it's gonna take you 3 years. What if you do $200 though? Put that in. It would take you 13 months. You saw that, right? Just doing $200 instead of $90, just do $200. It would take you 13 months. And look at this number. You would pay $356 in interest instead of over $1,000. Guys, this right here that I'm showing you all right now, this should be mandatory in from kindergarten. The second that they start teaching you, period, they should teach us this stuff, but they don't. Okay. So this is what I mean by that. Now, let's say if you're like, Cindy, but what if I want to pay it off in 6 months? Like I'm feeling good, I'm feeling motivated. What do I need to do to pay it off in 6 months? That's where you go here. So you don't fill out this box, you fill out this box and you go 6 months, calculate. The calculator is telling me that I need to make a payment of $396. If I do that, okay, for 7 months, I'm going to be able to pay off the card completely, including the interest. Okay. So I want you all to use this calculator. It's honestly life-changing. And just to show another quick example for like the student loans, the student loan example that I was given earlier. So let's say you take out for grad school, let's say $75,000, right? And let's say your interest is, if it's grad school, let's just use 7%, right? It might be higher, hopefully not, but let's just say that's what it is. Here we go. Okay, and let's say you want to pay it off in 120 months. What's 120 months? That's 10 years. That 10 years is the standard repayment. Okay, hear me out. 10 years is the standard repayment for student loans. So let's do 120 months. That means that your minimum monthly payment would be about $871. All right, so I was about right. You know, when I said that for every like 75,000, it's about $1,000 minimum payment. But can you guys all look at this number here? Can you guys all look at the interest? Look at how much interest you're gonna have to pay back. If you take out $75,000 of student loans, look at the interest that you will be paying back. In addition to the $75,000, $30,000. Okay. I do not say this because I want to discourage you all from pursuing higher degrees or from taking out a mortgage or buying a car. No, but we need to be educated. We need this exposure, especially in our communities, especially in communities of color, where we are just historically, unfortunately, because the financial institutions they've never cared about communities of color, we have a difficult time getting out of this. We do. And this is why. This is why, because that interest there, that's not going to you, that's going to the bank that lent you the money. All right. So this is why first of all, this is why I do what I do, right? But this is also why I feel that it's very important that at your level, all right, at the younger level, that we educate people on what this all means. Okay. So now let's go back to the presentation. We're going to go to the last step for the debt repayment, and then we're going to move on to credit, okay? Which is you need to choose a debt payoff strategy, okay? This is when we need to do a little bit of strategizing. So let's pretend here in this example, right? My client Anna tells me, Cindy, look, I did your debt overview thing, right? I followed exactly what you told me to do, and here's my breakdown. Okay, here's my breakdown. So we have the Chase credit card at $4,000. We have the minimum payment, right? So just take a look at this, right? This is, I would say, a very kind of like normal situation for what a client of mine would have. So they have total debt of about $30,000, okay? And these are their minimum payments and the interest rate. So look at the Chase credit card. Look at the credit card interest rate on that. It's pretty high, right? The federal loan is at 6% and the private loan is at 10%. And my client tells me, well, Cindy, how should I pay this off? Like, how do I, like, what do I do? Like, do I just make the minimum payments? Do I pay a little bit more than the minimum to all of the debts? Like, what do I do? And Anna and I, when we created the zero-based budget, she had an extra $300 to throw to the debt. So this is what I want all of you guys to do. I want you to pick a strategy. And it's in the workbook, okay? So you can compare like what exactly they are. There's one of two methods, okay? There is the debt snowball, which is what we have in front of you. This method involves you making the minimum payment on all of your debts. Check it out, everyone. The minimum payments on all of your debt, except for one, which is the smallest debt. So you need to arrange your debt from smallest to largest. So here, let's look at the example, right? Anna's smallest debt was the private loan. Let's go back. Okay. Let's go back. You see that? The private loan was $2,000. That's her smallest debt. So then what's the next debt? Well, the Chase credit card, right? Because it's $4,000. And what's the final debt is the federal loan, because that's the one that's at $24,000. So we're not looking at the interest rate. I don't want you guys to look at the interest rate. I want you guys to just look at the balance, the total balance. Okay. And we're going to pay it off by first tackling the private loan. That's the one that we're going to tackle. You see, so that additional payment, remember that I told you earlier here that like Anna tells me she has an extra $300 to throw to debt. And she's like, Cindy, where should I put that? It's going to go to this one here, the private loan. So the private loan payment is $100. We're not going to pay $100. We're going to pay $400. We're going to throw the $300 to the $400 to make it $400 payment for the private loan. And then the other two, we're going to make the minimum payment. So the debt snowball, we make a list. We list out our debts from smallest to largest, and we make minimum payment on every debt except for the smallest one, because that's the one that we need to knock out. Because look, as soon as she knocks out that one, she can roll over like a snowball. She can roll over the payment for the private loan, that $400 plus the minimum payment for the Chase credit card. So now she's not paying $50 to Chase. She's paying $450 to Chase. And then she knocks out that one. And then she moves on to the big one, which is the federal loan. Okay, so if that wasn't clear, make sure you ask the question in the chat. We can talk about it later, but the debt snowball, that's one. The debt avalanche is different. The debt avalanche is when we pay our loans from interest rate. That's what we look at, the interest rate. And we pay it from highest interest rate to lowest, like an Avalanche. Okay. And the Avalanche tells us, well, Cindy, we need to pay off the one with the highest interest rate first. And that is the Chase credit card. Remember, guys, that Anna's Chase credit card had like a 24% interest rate. That's the one that we're going to pay off first. Why? Because numerically, it makes the most sense. It's going to save the most money. Why? Because mathematically, we are tackling the one with the highest, that is the most expensive. Notice that the federal loan and the private loans aren't the most expensive. The Chase credit card is, because that's the one that she's paying the most money back to in terms of the interest rate. And so people will ask me, well, Cindy, what's the right one? Like, what's the right one? Which one should I go with? And the truth is that there is no right one. I prefer the Debt Avalanche just because I'm a numbers person. Like, I'm all about numbers. I'm all about saving money. Okay. And so I like the Debt Avalanche for that reason. But if you're the kind of person that you just need the motivation, right? You just need to be able to knock out the little debts and then get to the bigger ones, then do the Debt Snowball. I've had clients that do both. You know, some will do the Debt Snowball, some will do the Debt Avalanche. You can do either or. The important thing is to do one and to pick it and to pay off your debt. Okay. So that right there, my friends, is how I use this 4-step system to get out of my $215,000 of debt. Yes, that is a massive amount of debt. Absolutely. And I would be remiss if I didn't point to the fact that a big part of me being able to make the additional payments had to do with my salary, right? I'm an attorney. I'm a corporate lawyer. There is no secret to the fact that corporate lawyers make a lot of money. Yes, even in New York City. That's just what it is. However, a lot of my classmates, guys, they still have 6 figures of debt. And a lot of them have the same type of job that I do. The same type of job. So what's the difference? What's the difference between them and me? Is it that I'm smarter than them? No, not at all. It's just that I had a plan. I had a written plan to get out of debt. And when you have a written plan, okay, and your written plan can literally be in that workbook there, you will do it. You will accomplish it. It just takes a little bit of work, a little bit of effort, okay? So now that we went through all of that, we're gonna go through the credit discussion, which is really, really important, okay? And this is important because it's the kind of thing that some people will say like, oh, your credit doesn't matter, right? And that's wrong. It does matter a lot. And so first of all, what is credit? What is credit? What does that mean? Okay. And also, Cindy, why are you talking about this when we're talking about like debt? Well, you'll see that it has a lot to do with debt. Credit does have a lot to do with debt. All right. And we need to be paying off our debts while rebuilding our credit score or building our credit score. Okay. So first of all, what is credit? It's the ability for you to basically purchase things before you actually need to pay for it. Let's think about that. You can purchase things without actually paying for it. That's how debt works, right? I mean, think about it. You go to school, you take out a loan. So you're able to purchase something. What's the something? It's being able to go to school, right? Attending school, the dorm, the tuition, the fees, all that stuff, right? You're able to do that without you from your bank account paying that. How? Because of credit. What about a credit card? You go to a store and you see a pair of nice sneakers that you want to buy. You buy the sneakers with a credit card. But that doesn't mean you have paid for the sneakers. That doesn't mean that you've transferred money from your bank account to pay for the sneakers. So you haven't done that yet. Well, why? Because somewhere out there, the entity that lent you the money, so with a credit card, the bank, right? With your student loans, it could be that the federal government or the financial institutions that the federal government manages, they lent you the money because they trust. That's the key word. They trust that you're going to pay them back in the future. So that's what credit is. is the ability for you to purchase things without you personally making the payment because someone trusted you to pay it back. Okay. And so, yeah, what this means is that you're taking on debt. That's what it means. It does. Okay. That's why I'm saying that having credit, having good credit means that you're actually very, very good at managing debt. So that is true. Okay. But I'm going to show you why and how and, all the ins and outs. Okay. So before we go there, here's a common thing that a lot of people don't understand. They come to me and they're like, Cindy, but I don't know what's the difference between a credit report and a credit score. Like, I don't understand it. What's the one with the number and what's the credit report for? Here's the way I want you to think about it. Okay. The credit report is a report, like an actual report that has all of your information, all of your personal information, name, you get access to it by putting in your social security number. It has the addresses. It has addresses that you used to live in. It has every debt that you basically have taken out in the past, like at least 7 years. Some go further than that. It has everything that you've possibly owed, any like student loans, credit cards, everything. And that report is where they get your credit score from. Your credit score is a specific number that shows how worthy you are of credit. Let's take that step by step. The credit report is a large report that has all of your information, all of your debt history, everything about you. If you missed a payment in October 2015, it's probably on there. Okay. Like it has all this information from you. And then from there, they extract a number, a 3-digit number, and that is your credit score. So when you tell someone, hey, lend me money, I want to buy a car, but I can't pay for it all in cash, so I need to finance it, lend me some money. They pull the credit score. The credit score tells them whether you are or are not worthy of credit. So an easy way to think about it, your credit report is your report card. Your credit score is your GPA. Okay, that's how I want you to think about it. Your credit report is your report card. Your credit score is your GPA. Well, Cindy, why does this matter? What if I just don't want to have credit? Can I just do that? No. That's a simple answer. No. See, good credit tells lenders, like I said, that you're worthy of borrowing money. You're like, well, Cindy, I don't need to borrow money. I'm never going to have to take out money, like borrow money for the rest of my life. Well, you might. Do you want to buy a house? I mean, can you pay for a house in cash? Look, here in New York City, houses are easily like the cheaper ones are like $600,000-$700,000. A nicer house is going to be about $800,000, $900,000, $1 million. I don't know about you guys, but I don't have $1 million in the bank. I don't. I'd love to. I will one day, but I don't, right? And also if I did, I would not want to put it all, to a house, right? I wouldn't want to just spend all of that money on one thing. So what do? You take out a mortgage, right? Well, how do you get a mortgage? You need to have good credit. You need credit. Oh, I want to buy a car, so I'm going to have to finance it. You need credit. I want to refinance my student loans. What does refinance mean? It basically means that you're gonna take out a new loan with another company so that that company can pay off your old loan, and you will now have the debt with a new company. And it's like, well, Cindy, why would anyone do that? Well, refinancing, the goal is that you get a better interest rate. By the way, that's actually what I did for my student loans. I do not recommend that right now because of the federal loan freeze. But that's what I did. I had to. Remember I told you guys that my interest rate was like 9%. It was disgusting. A 9% interest on a $190,000 loan is awful. So I refinanced it and I got 4.25% interest. Okay. But you know what happened when I tried to do that? They ran my credit. Okay. If you want to get certain jobs, yes, Yes. Oh, you think you can get away from this? No, 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 no. Because for certain jobs, especially if you're going into finance, accounting, if you certain banks require it, like if you want to work as like a bank, like a branch manager or something like that, okay, they will tell you, oh, we need to run your credit. Well, then what's going to happen then if you don't have credit? Well, I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen. One of my friends, she applied for a big finance company. Her offer was rescinded. You heard that right. Her offer was rescinded. Don't worry, she's great now. She actually has a really great Instagram page too. It's called Make Real Sense. Her name is Carmen. She's wonderful. But yeah, she's talked about that. Her job offer was rescinded because she did not have good credit. She had really terrible credit. If you want to start a business, you need credit. You want to lease an apartment here in New York City, you want to lease an apartment. Any of you guys ever want to move to New York City? Guess what they're going to do? They're going to run your credit. You need credit. That's what I want you all to walk away with. Okay. And you're like, all right, Cindy, fine. You've convinced me. I need credit. But I'm in college. Like, it's not that big of a deal, right? Wrong. I'm 32 years old. I have friends that in college, they messed up their credit and they are still, hear me out, they are still struggling with their credit. They messed this up like 10 years ago. But the thing is that a lot of this is about habit and a lot of it is about honestly just not knowing. And so now there's no excuse because now you guys know. So these are the resources that I want you to go to. They're all linked in your worksheet. So you don't need to take a screenshot. You don't need to write this down frantically, right? No, it's all in the worksheet. These are free. I repeat, these are free, which means that none of you have an excuse for not pulling this information. All right. And the first one is you're going to make sure you go to annualcreditreport.com. That's a first option, right? The reason why I recommend it first is because the federal government actually authorizes that specific website, okay? I also recommend Experian. You can get your credit report and your credit score from there without putting in like a credit card or anything like that. And another one is Credit Karma, okay? So these are just some suggestions. Do it. Get your information. Maybe your parents haven't run their credit information, or maybe your sisters or brothers haven't, or siblings. Send them this. Send them the information. Tell them, hey, have you checked out, do you know what your credit score is? No. Oh, check it out. Here, look, Experian.com. They have something totally free. You can just check it out. All right. So let's get into the nitty gritty. What's a good credit score? Because you're like, Cindy, you're telling me that like some places are really going to reject you. Like, does that really happen? Yes, it does. So let's talk about what is a good credit score, all right? Well, let's start with what's a very poor credit score, which is 300 to 579. You're like, Cindy, there's no way that people have that. Oh yeah, I have loved ones that have had that kind of credit score. I've had clients that have had that kind of credit score. I've had clients that have had a 480 credit score, which is really, really bad, really bad. That's okay. Because I'm going to show you guys some tips on how to improve that. So I don't care what your situation is. You can build. Even if you don't have any credit. If you're like, Cindy, my credit is 0. It's okay. You can improve it. All right. Then there's fair, which is 580 to 69. Then there's good. All right. So good is where we're going to start getting more approvals for like better credit cards, better perks. That's going to require 670 to 739. A very good credit score is going to be 740 to 779. And then, of course, we have what we all want to achieve, which is an exceptional credit score of over 800. Okay. So just so that you guys know, when I was in college, my credit score, I think was like something like 680, something like that. I think that was in college, and that's because I did actually take out a credit card when I was in high school. It used to be legal back then. It's actually illegal now. That there was a law that passed, I think back in like, I don't know, 2010. It was part of the Dodd-Frank reform on financial institutions, and they actually prohibit the solicitation of of credit card usage basically at the high school level, because that's what the banks used to do. So, this bank came to my high school and I was a senior and I was like, oh, cool, I get to get my first credit card. I had a little puppy on it. It was super cute. One of the worst things that I did, because that credit card caused me a lot of problems. But anyways, whatever, you live and you learn, right? So that was my credit score back then. And my credit score now is an 820. And I don't have any debt. And I'll tell you guys about like how I've been able to get that in a bit. So you're like, all right, Cindy, well, what does it depend on? Like, how do I get my credit up? Like what are good things, what are, things to keep in mind? So these are the 5 things that your credit score depends on. Please pay attention to this because this is very, very important. Look, number 1 is going to be the payment history. That means if you miss a payment, please, if you miss a payment just accidentally, call the credit card company. Call them. Just tell them, I'm so sorry, I accidentally missed this payment. Can you please, I'll make the payment right away. Can you please just, not report it to the credit card companies? Because that's what happens. Your credit card companies, not the credit card company, the credit reporting bureau. So what happens is that your credit card companies, every month, they take your data, your payment history, your payment amount, all of that, and they send it to the credit bureaus. And the credit bureaus, they're like, oh, this person missed the payment, X for you. That person made the payment, check for you. That's what they do. They get this information, okay? So your payment history, look at the pie graph. It's over a third. Over a third of your credit score is literally just make your payment. Just make it on time. Please do not miss a payment. If you miss payments, if you miss a payment, it can affect you. If you miss payments, oh, it's going to screw you over. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. Okay. Another one is the amount you owe, which is your utilization. We're going to go into details about utilization after, because utilization is something that a lot of people don't understand, but it's an incredibly important thing to understand. So it's going to be the amount you owe. All right. Next is the length of credit history. So how long have you had your credit cards for? So I've had credit for well over a decade. That's a big factor on why my credit score is high. Now, me just even 5 years ago, my credit score wasn't quite as high because my history of having credit wasn't so long because I was younger, right? So the length of credit history isn't a matter. 10% is new credit open. So how many times are you like taking out new credit, trying to open up new credit cards and things like that? And another 10% is the type of credit. The type of credit is what kinds of debt do you have? Do you have student loans and a car loan and a personal loan and a credit card? That's a nice little mix there. That's 10%. Just so that all of you know, the 10%, the type of credit, that's actually my weakest factor because I only have credit cards. I don't have student loans anymore. I don't have a car loan. I don't have a mortgage. I don't have any other kind of debt except for credit cards. However, my credit score is still over 800 because all of the other factors I have on check. Okay. So that's what your credit score depends on. All right. If you're like, well, Cindy, but how do I build it? How do I improve it? You can say, Cindy, I either have zero credit or I have very poor credit. What do I do? Well, the first thing is you need to work on the 5 factors. You need to work on your payment history, how much you owe, the length of credit history, the credit mix, and the new credit open. These are the 5 things that you need to work on. Okay. So a big one that I think everyone can get better at is to keep your utilization low. So utilization is how much you're using of the credit that they give to you. So let's take a step back, okay? Let's pretend that we have 2 credit cards, all right, from Chase Bank and Bank of America, and they each give you $3,000. Let's make it easier, $5,000 of credit. That's pretty high, right? So that probably won't be the case if it's like your first card, but let's just pretend that's what you have. That means that you have $10,000 of credits available to you. Again, you have 2 credit cards. Those are the 2 types of credit that you have. One is for $5,000, the other one's for $5,000. That means that for a total, you have $10,000. Now, people out there will say you need to keep the utilization at less than 30%. What does that mean? That means that you should keep less than $3,000, 30% of 10,000, $3,000 across both cards. However, I say you should keep it at less than 10%. I say you should keep it at $1,000 or less in terms of like, the debt that you have. Do you guys see then why, if let's say you have $10,000 of credit available to you and you maxed out your cards, you've heard of that happening, right? Like people max out their credit cards. Okay, when you max out your credit cards, what's your utilization? It's 100%. That's one of the things in life. You don't want 100%. You don't want to be at 100% at that. No, you want to be at 10% or less. All right, guys. So why am I emphasizing utilization? Why am I saying like utilization? Make sure you keep it low. Make sure you keep it low. Well, one, because I obviously don't want you to have a lot of debt, right? And when you have lower utilization, it means you have lower debt. But also because utilization and payment history, just those two things, guys. Remember, let's look at this. All right, let's go back. Just those two things, payment history and utilization, is 65% of your credit score. If you just learn how to keep your debt lowered and you make your payments on time, that already right there is 65% of the equation. So that's why I emphasize utilization so much, right? So what do credit cards have to do with this? Okay. Well, credit cards have a lot to do with it because credit cards are actually one of the fastest ways to build credit. And it's also one of the fastest ways to destroy credit. So if you learn how to use them smartly, you can build really good credit really quickly. If you don't know how to use them smartly, you can have really poor credit for years to come. And we don't want that. All right. So if you're like, well, Cindy, okay, thanks for this presentation. This has been all great and all, but look, I'm going to be honest with you. My credit is trash. Like I have really bad credit or I have no credit. I've never taken out a credit card in my life. So I don't even know where to start. Well, where you're going to start is with a secured credit card. That's where you're going to start. A secured credit card. So what's the secured credit card? It's an excellent way, okay, excellent way to build your credit from scratch or to rebuild it. If for some reason something happened in the road. And look, if something happened where now your credit is like really poor, don't beat yourself up over it. It happens to a lot of people. It does. It happens to a lot of people. It's very, very common. It's just that people don't like talking about it, right? Because people feel a lot of shame when it comes to money and, all of this. So don't feel alone, okay? So what's a secured credit card? So basically the way it works, all right, is you go to a bank and you can look them up. They're in the resource in the workbook. Okay, I have I have recommendations for some of the top secured credit cards. So make sure you look at the workbook. And you go to the bank and they say, well, you need to give us a security deposit. That's why they're called secured credit cards. You need to leave a security. And in that case, you leave as cash. Okay. And so if you want them to give you a $200 credit limit, you need to pay them $200 in cash. And a lot of people think that like that's absurd. Like, why am I paying so that then they can give me money that I can borrow? Like that makes no sense. Well, it does make sense because this is what it is. First of all, they're going to refund you the money. First of all, okay. There is a condition though that they wouldn't refund you the money. I'll tell you that in a second. But basically, unsecured credit cards are what like the normal credit cards that you hear about. Those are called unsecured, which means that if you miss a payment, there's nothing to back it up, right? Like, let's just say, guys, like I have a card, I have two credit cards now, but I have let's just say I have one card with Chase Bank. And if it's an unsecured card, let's say I forget to make my payment, where are they gonna get their money from? I mean, sure, they can take me to like collections, right? But there's nothing is securing that card. That's why it's called unsecured. With the secured credit card, you know what they have? They have your cash deposit. And that's where they can take the money from. Remember, if a secured credit card, the purpose of it is to help you build or rebuild your credit, which means that you're riskier. If you don't have credit, if you don't have a credit history, if you're just a young college student, the banks, they see you as risky. They don't know if you're going to pay them back. How would they know? You don't have credit. You don't have a history. So how are they supposed to know that you're good at making your payments? They don't know that. They're not going to take your word for it. That's why they need your money. So that's the purpose of the deposit. Okay. It's to have a security deposit in case you don't pay your bill, which you all are going to do, right? Because we focus on the importance of that. So then what the secured credit card company does is they say, okay, well, you know what? Let's say Cindy is she's making her payments. She's making them on time. She's reporting this activity. They're reporting this activity to the credit bureaus. So April comes, they're like, oh, look, Cindy made her payment on time. Good. All right. They tell the credit bureaus. So credit bureaus put a little check next to me. Then May comes, same thing. They put a check next to me. What happens is that after a certain amount of months, usually it's about like 6 months to a year, anywhere between then, the credit card company goes, tap, tap, tap. Congratulations. You did an excellent job at managing the secured credit card. We're going to upgrade you now to an unsecured. And when you're upgraded, that deposit gets returned back to you because remember, you made all your payments on time, right? It gets returned back to you and the credit, everyone's happy. Everyone is happy. Your credit score is now improving. You're able to now you have credit. You have credit because remember what the credit bureaus, they were collecting all that information from the secured credit card company. That's your credit now. So now you can go and get a normal credit card, all right? But you want to make sure that no matter what credit cards you have, you need to keep your balance low. Remember, less than 10%. The companies out there, they'll say 30%. Cindy says 10%. You want to keep your balance low and you want to pay on time. All right. And so these are some recommendations for secured credit cards. All right. The Discover It card is a really popular one. That one doesn't have an annual fee, neither does the Capital One. So that's why I like recommending these. I like recommending things that don't have fees. So for the Discover Secured card, I believe it's a $200 security deposit. You can take it out and then, you can go from there. Also, if you don't have a social security number, there is information in the last tab, the resources tab, for the best security, the best credit cards for those that don't have an SSN. Okay, so just in case, check that out too. All right. All right. So let me give you guys some of the information on my credit cards. Okay. Let's talk about what's in my wallet. All right. So this is the last slide before we go into Q&A. All right, guys. So I want you to have prepared your questions on all things debt payoff, credit, anything like that. Okay. We're going to get to all of that. If you put a question in the chat, we will get to that too. All right. But this is what's in my wallet. I have 7 credit cards, which is completely unnecessary. Okay. Let me just start off by saying that you do not need 7 credit cards. No one needs 7 credit cards, okay? But I do. And here's why. I have 7 credit cards. I have 6 personal credit cards, and then I have my business credit card, right? So Zero Based Budget Coaching LLC is a business. It's a completely different person than Cindy Zuniga-Sanchez, right? Like we're different people. And so my business needs its own credit card, okay? And so they have like that's where I put all of my business transactions. Just a hot tip, if any of you are looking to start your own businesses, no matter what kind of entity you have, keep your money separate. I'm just going to say that. I'm a lawyer. I'm a corporate lawyer. I have seen it all. Keep your money separate. Okay. That's the only thing I'm going to say on that. So I have my 6 personal credit cards. Well, why do I have so many credit cards? Points, cash back. Okay, I'm gonna get to that in a second. So here's an example of the utilization, right? So my credit limit across all of my credit cards is something like $64,000. Like that's how much credit I have available to me. But obviously I don't owe $64,000 on credit cards. Like that's absurd. I know, right? So what I would recommend is to make sure that you keep your balance low. But for me, I actually make sure I pay off my balance when I do get a credit card statement, right? So let's say, guys, I use my credit cards, I swipe it throughout the month, cool, right? Then they send me a statement. My credit card companies, they say, hey, look, Cindy, this is how much you owe. Let's pretend, guys, I want you to type it in the chat because I want to see if these principles are sticking. Let's pretend that my minimum payment is $100, but what I owe is $500. Let's say that again. What I owe on the credit card is $500, but the minimum payment is only $100. How much do you think I'm going to pay? And you can write it in the chat. And look, there's no right or wrong because everyone's going to be different, right? But how much would Cindy pay? Again, the balance says, Cindy, you owe $500 from this month, but your minimum payment is $100. How much does Cindy pay? Okay. So we have Yogesh saying $100. Randy is saying a little over $200. Okay. Do I hear $300? Auctioning. Oh, Tam, we have $500. Do I hear any other amount? $200 from Jen. Okay. All right, guys, look. So you're saying like, it can vary, right? It can vary. And people will pay different things. But this is what I do. I pay it off in full. When I get that balance, that statement that says, hey, Cindy, you owe $500. Oh, but you only have to pay us $100. I ignore the minimum payment because I'm debt free now and I want to stay debt free. But I also don't want to pay interest anymore. You see, guys, this is what happens. If I only pay the minimum payment, $100, oh, the credit card company is very happy. And that gets reported to the credit bureaus and I get all the checks and they're all very happy, right? But that's not the only thing that's involved here. Because guess what? Now that means that for the next month, it's $400 that's rolling over. Now the credit card companies are going to hit me with the interest and they're going to charge me an interest on those $400. I have not paid interest to anything in 5 years. Any credit card companies, I have not paid interest to them at all. I don't do that. Okay. So this is the strategy. I want you to remember this. SPP. Swipe, post, pay. Swipe the card when you go buy something. Let the balance post. Let it post to your account. Let you get the statement. Your credit card company is going to give you the statement. Let them do that. You don't need to pay it off right then and there. You don't need to pay it off the same day. No. Let the statement post, but then you pay it off in full. Swipe, post, pay. That is my strategy with credit cards. Okay. And before we get to the Q&A, I also want to just let you guys know that with the 6 personal credit cards, 2 of them are store cards. The only reason why I have those cards active is because at this point, because I've had them for so long, every year they send me like cash, like store credits that I can use. So I have a Banana Republic card. Every year they send me about like $300 just in store credits, and I don't pay anything to them. It doesn't bother me. So it doesn't have an annual fee. So I win. Another one is Macy's. That's the other card that I have had. I've had Macy's since I was in college. So I've had it for over 10 years. It's good to have on my credit report, right? Because it has a long payment history. So I don't benefit if I close it. So those are 2 of those cards. I have 2 travel credit cards. I have the JetBlue credit card and I have the Chase Sapphire Preferred. The Chase Sapphire Preferred is actually my newest one, guys. I just signed up for it on, I think it was Sunday or Monday. It's my newest credit card, and I will have you all know that in 3 months, they're gonna give me a $1,000 travel voucher because I need to get it out of the United States. I don't know about you guys, but that's gonna happen, okay? So it's exciting, right? Because that's how you learn how to use credit cards to make money. Remember the motto: learn how to make money from credit card companies. Stop having the credit card companies take money from you. That is the motto, okay? So I have 2 travel credit cards, 2 store credit cards, and then 2 cashback credit cards. So I like them just because they each have their own benefits. Is it necessary? Absolutely not. I think that if you have 2 or 3 credit cards, you are more than fine. But that's just a little bit about me, okay? So with that said, I'm really happy to share that we are ending on time in terms of the presentation to give you all a good amount of time for Q&A. I know I said a lot. This was a lot. There's a lot of information to take in. So I want you all to please ask me your questions. If you want to send me a question anonymously, just send it to me in the chat. Okay, you can totally do that. There's no dumb question. I will not say who asked it. I will just repeat the question and answer it. So you can do that anonymously. You can just put it in the chat. Or if you want to just engage with me, go ahead to, turn on your video and let's chat. And you can ask me your question then, okay? So I wanna thank all of you for, just paying attention to this presentation, and now let's get to the questions, all right? So I have some questions up here. So I have a first one which says, Cindy, does missing a payment on a secured credit card still affect your credit? Yes, it does. That's an excellent question. It does affect it. Why? Because let's think of the secured credit card as like you're dating, but you're not in the relationship. You're not ready to commit yet. You're just dating. So if you mess up, it's going to be reported. Somebody's going to say something. Okay. So in short, yes, it does. And your credit card company will report it to the credit bureaus. Okay. Next question is, does upgrading to an unsecured credit card help improve your credit better than a secured credit card? Yes, it does. Because usually what happens is that when you go to the next level, the unsecured credit card, you have a bigger limit. Let's walk through that. With a secured credit card, usually your limit is very low. It's like $200 or so, right? But now you've proven yourself. So now it's like Beyonce, like, let me upgrade you. I'm going to upgrade you now to the unsecured credit card. And now I'm not going to give you $200. I'm going to give you $500. Why is that better? It's better because the more credit you have available to you, the lower your utilization. And remember, utilization is 35% of the equation. So we like having larger limits. Look, guys, mine is at like $64,000 now. It was certainly not that amount in college. I think in college, my credit limit was about like $5,000, I think, because I had 2 credit cards. But your utilization is everything, right? So that's why we like that. So that's a really, really good question. So I have an anonymous question, which says, how long and how much to save up for a mortgage loan? Single. So this person is single and they want to know how to save up for mortgage, right? So I want to first of all introduce you to this concept of state-run programs. All right. Here, and I don't know if they have it in California. Let me just look at it really quickly. There's a program here in New York called NACA. And NACA is a program that helps people with getting a mortgage, basically, right? And it's usually, okay, so I think they might actually have one in, I'm going to send it in the chat, all right? So all of you can see what it says. Okay, so here we go. Let me just send it to everyone. So I want you to first look into these kinds of home ownership programs. And the reason why is because there are a lot of programs that will allow you to take out a mortgage at kind of like a better rate. You basically get a much better deal. NACA is one type of program that does that. There are so many, like you can like Google like First time, I'm gonna write what I want you to Google, okay? I'm gonna write it in the chat. First time home buyer program in California, right? Or San Diego, or Los Angeles, right? Whatever your place is, right, guys? Like, I want you to Google that. And I want you to just educate yourself. Do not just like go and get a mortgage. No, no, no. Educate yourself first on the programs. That's going to impact how much of a down payment you're going to have. Now, there is the federal homeowner first time buyers program. There is that, right? And that's a federal program, which is great, and definitely look into it. Usually what they require is something like 4% of a down payment. Okay. But depending on the kind of loan that you get, you will have to pay something called PMI, which is private mortgage insurance. It's basically a fee that you have to pay because you didn't pay the complete, let's say 20% down payment, which is about average. Okay. So I would say that you want to first do the research, because the research is going to tell you how much you should save up. Right? Let's just say, as an example, a home is $500,000 and you're supposed to do a $4,000 down payment, right? So that's what, $20,000 of a down payment that you're going to have. Well, then that's what you should have. That's what you should aim to save. And what I want you to do, where I want you to save it and how and all of that. Remember sinking funds, guys? Remember on Monday, we talked about sinking funds, and there's a formula on that worksheet and everything. That's what I want you to use. I want you to use the sinking funds formula, and I want you to calculate how long it'll take you to save up the down payment. All right. If you want to do 20%, right? 20% of the $500,000 would be $100,000. So that would be a down payment of $100,000. And I'm sure that, especially because you guys are in California, a lot of homes are way more than $500,000, right? It's hard. It's not easy. It's hard, which is why I want you to look into these programs first. They're super, super helpful. A lot of them have really good information. At the very least, you want to make sure you're purchasing a home will be the biggest purchasing decision you ever make in your life. So make sure that you look into that very, very well and do your careful research. We have another anonymous question. Does going above the 30% of your credit limit affect your credit score even if you pay it full in time? Excellent question. So you're like, all right, Cindy, so I got the $10,000 credit limit, but I had to like put a bunch of things on my credit card, and I put like $5,000 on it. But I'm going to pay it off. I'm going to pay it off. Right. So the answer is that it shouldn't really affect it then. Right now, keep in mind, right? It will get reported that depending on when the information is sent to the credit bureau, it could get reported that you're at 50% of your credit utilization. And you might see your credit score drop about like maybe 3 points, but as soon as you pay it off, you're going to see it increase by like 8 points. That's happened to me. Don't freak out. So I'll give you guys a good example. I got married in September, and my husband and I agreed that, because I'm the one that has all the credit cards, that we would put basically like our entire wedding on my credit cards because of the points, of the cash back, right? Like we got a lot of perks like from being able to do that. We got like the dinner tasting for our thing. We got it for free because like I used my cash back to pay for it. So there were a lot of things that we were able to score for free. But because of that, my credit utilization at one point was a lot higher, right? And that got reported. And I think it decreased my score by maybe 3 points. Like it was not a big deal at all, because the following month, like obviously it reported that the whole thing was paid off, and it jumped, it skyrocketed. So I would just say, just make sure that you're in the, like, don't be afraid if you need to use more than 30%. That's why it's there, right? I certainly have. Just make sure that you pay it off on time. That would be my biggest thing. Okay, I have another question. If you have money to save, but you know you will need a loan because of school in a couple of years, would you recommend keeping it in something like a CD to grow? Okay, first of all, what's a CD? A CD is a certificate of deposit, okay? What a CD does basically is you deposit a certain amount of money with the bank, and the bank says, we're gonna freeze your money Oh, and Randy, I just saw that you have your hand up. You're next. You're next. Okay. So we're gonna freeze your money. You cannot touch it, or you're gonna have to pay a penalty, and we're gonna pay you a higher interest rate, right? So you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like I wanna, put it in a CD. I don't like CDs. I don't like CDs because right now the rates are very, very similar to high yield savings accounts. Remember, we went through high yield savings accounts on Monday, right? Where there's these different types of accounts where you get a little bit more interest on your money. So personally, what I would do if I were you, so another reason why I don't like the CDs is because what if something does come up and you just need that money, right? Life happens, especially, I mean, look at this past year, right? Life happens. I don't love the idea of your money being locked up. You can look into it. I'm not saying that they're bad. It's just that I personally would rather dedicate a sinking fund, label it education, and I would save money in that account. I would just throw money there so that it can start, growing a little bit, but also so that it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. So you're kind of pretending that it's not even an option available to you. But at the same time, it's growing a little something in interest. That's what I would do. Okay. Randy, talk to me.
It's interesting.
Yeah, so I actually have two questions, but my first question is it true that if
you're hoping your starting pitcher gets the job done, certainly, but
sorry about that. But is it true that if you go to like a car dealership or somewhere else and they ask to run your credit, that your credit can go down just them like looking at it?
Yes, that's an excellent question. I love that you asked that. That is called a hard inquiry. So Randy, let me tell you what happened when I took out a credit card on, I think it was Sunday or Monday. I forgot when it was that I submitted my application. So I bank with Chase. I've been banking with them since I was like 15 years old. And they have this amazing offer. I told you guys about it, right? That it's like $1,000 in travel credit. And I was like, heck yeah, sign me up, right? When I applied for that credit card, the same thing as you're trying to get a car financed or this or that, they do what is called a hard inquiry. At the hard inquiry, they are checking to see, well, how's your credit? So the bank checked and they were like, well, how's Cindy's credit? They're going to check and see how's Randy's credit. Okay. That will affect your credit score. It will. So for me, I actually got an alert from Experian because I have the alerts with Experian. And as soon as I open, I swear to you, as soon as I opened the Chase card, they said, Cindy, hard inquiry alert. Like I got an email right away that said hard inquiry alert. And the reason why they do that is because I know my credit score is going to drop a little bit, right? What it's going to drop typically is no more than like 5 to 10 points, typically. Okay, it should not be more than 10 points. And if it is, you need to look into that. It's usually more like 5 points. The reason why it drops is because the credit gods, let's just call them that, they don't like that you're trying with so many places to get like your credit, run. It's like, well, why is he trying to open up a credit card and get a car loan and get this all at the same time? So what I would recommend is that you ask the dealership to confirm that they are going to run your credit as a hard inquiry. Some places, do not quote me, some places will allow as a preliminary, just as a preliminary run for you to basically attest to, like basically to show what your credit score is. Why does that matter? There's a difference when you check your credit, Randy, than when they do. When you check it, it's called a soft inquiry. That's why when I told you guys, like check your credit scores, check your credit report, there's nothing negative with that. Your credit score is untouched. You could check it every day if you want to. That's fine. You can do that, but they can't. Because when they check it, it's a hard inquiry. When you check it, it's a soft inquiry. Soft inquiries do not affect your credit score. Hard inquiries do.
Got it. Thank you. I'll let someone else ask a question, then you can get back to me.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So we have Tanmoy, hand raised. Talk to me.
Hi. So I love this so much because I'm actually an immigrant. So a lot of this information, like even my parents don't know.
Amazing.
So yeah, but what I was gonna ask is, say someone is, I don't really have a lot of debt. I have like 5 grand maybe, and that's just like personal loans. But if someone is in debt, how do you kind of balance the emotional part of it? Like, how do you like making those sacrifices of like maybe going back home, or you know, like how do you balance that?
Yeah. So, so I want to answer this question in two parts. One part is just how do you deal with the emotional aspect generally of debt? The first step is you forgive yourself. You have to. You don't have a choice. You have to forgive yourself for whatever happened in the past. I don't care how much debt you have. I have had clients, let me tell you right now, I have had clients that come to me with $400,000 of debt, and they don't have a mortgage. They don't have a mortgage. So you're like, wait, how did they get all that debt? School, doctors, dentists. I don't know if any of you are trying to become dentists. If you are, bless you. Amazing career. You will make a ton of money. You will also have a ton of debt. Okay. These are extremely high paying professions with extremely high debts. Whatever happens, you forgive yourself. Whether you got the high paying job or not, you forgive yourself. That's the first part of it. You have to. That's step one. Step number two is that you have to remember your why. You have to focus on your why. Why are you trying to get out of debt? Why are you trying to build wealth? Why are all of you in this presentation today? What's the why? You see, guys, my why is my parents, because my parents immigrated to this country with nothing. When they got married, they moved into their apartment. They had a mattress. That's it. They didn't have anything else. They couldn't afford it. They are my why. They are the reason why I was like, I need to get out of debt. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. I'm not going to make excuses for myself. I'm not going to try to feel bad for myself. I'm going to educate myself. So step one, forgive yourself. Step two, know your why. What is your why? And look, if your why is that you want to take really fancy vacations, that's cool too, right? But you need to focus on that. The third thing, though, that I think I heard in your question was, what if you have to make sacrifices? Like you got to move back in with your parents. You're not going to drive the nice car. You got to do what you got to do. Right? You see, with me, when I told my peers, when I was graduating from law school, when I told them that I was going to stay in my studio apartment in Harlem, here in New York City, they were like, why? Like, why wouldn't you upgrade to like a nicer, fancier apartment? Like, Cindy, you could live in like a high-rise building in like Midtown, right? First of all, that sounds terrible because Midtown is like Times Square and all that craziness, and absolutely not. It's also where my job is. My job is in Rockefeller Center, like literally next to the Christmas tree, which is the craziest time of the year. Like, yes, it's the most wonderful time of the year. It is also the craziest time of the year. Living in Midtown sounds like a nightmare. But the reason why I didn't is because I had a job. I had a job. But this is how you stay motivated. You write the plan down. You see, because I had a plan and it was written down, for you guys, it can be in that workbook that I gave you. For me, it could be in a pen and paper. For someone else, it can be on their phone, whatever it is. Because I had it written down, I had the end in mind. So I knew that the end was coming. I just needed to push myself. So the best way to deal with it emotionally, of course, is to, if you can, tell someone, talk to someone about it. You don't have to be like me. I turned to the entire internet to like talk about my story. You don't have to do that. You don't have to like put your business out like that. But I would say talk to someone and have a written plan. Those are my best 2 pieces of advice. Okay. And then I have another question, Randy, before I get to you is, Yogesh, I have, what is the good period to restructure the loan that we already owe? I had a car loan at 4.7%. Then 6 months back, I asked a new company for a takeover of the loan and they offered 3.7%. Where can I check more about cheaper loans? That's great. So that's a whole percentage down. That's a great option. First of all, Yogesh, my recommendation to you would be to make sure that you are using the debt repayment calculator to calculate what kind of an impact that has on your loan. right? Because you want to figure out, well, how much is that actually going to save me, Cindy? Run the numbers. Put that in the calculator that I sent you, that I sent all of you, and that is in the worksheet. As far as cheaper loans, it's really going to depend. Also, I want you to check your credit score, right? I want you to check like what's your credit score looking like, because when you check your credit score, it's an 810, so you have a phenomenal credit score. So you definitely want to make sure you're getting a good a good rate. So let me send you something right now, Yogesh, and this is for anyone else that also wants to look into this. Okay, I'm going to send you. So I absolutely love NerdWallet. I think they have excellent resources, and right now interest rates are really cheap. They're really low. So check out that article that I'm sending you. Oh, sorry, I think I'm sending it to everyone right now. Okay, did it go through? Oh, there we go. Okay, so check out the calculator, okay? And look at the options. And, what you want to look at, specifically the language you want to look at is auto loan refinance, okay? Because 3.7, with that kind of credit score, I feel like you can get something like a 2.5, honestly. So I would look into that, okay? But that's a really good question. All right, and Randy, go for it.
Yeah, so my next question was, what's your take on like the metal cards? Are those credit cards, or what do you recommend those?
So first of all, are you talking about like the
like the metal American Express cards?
okay, so hold on a second. Let me see if I want to make sure that I'm looking at the back one. Okay. All right. So I want to show you all, because I want to make sure you're all on the same page as us. I'm going to send you all something really quick. All right. And of course, I'm going to send you all my best resource. Okay. Hold on. You guys are going to get it right now. Okay. So once again, NerdWallet. I love NerdWallet, right? Because it allows you to compare things, which is excellent. All right. So first of all, we need to talk about the fact that the truth is that metal credit cards are a status symbol, right? That's what they are. They're basically like, ooh, look at how rich I am. Look at how heavy my credit card is, right? I personally don't care about any of that stuff. I care about the benefits. What are the actual benefits that these cards are giving me? Because see, Randy, what we're not doing is we're not paying interest rates, period, right? We already established that. We're not doing that. We're not going down that rabbit hole of having to pay interest or anything like that. What we're doing is looking at the benefits. See, a lot of the metal credit cards, they have fees. Okay, they have fees. That's a big thing about them. Some of these cards have hundreds of dollars of fees annually. It's a status symbol. So ultimately, what it comes down to is what are the benefits and how much is it going to cost me? Because even if you're doing what I'm doing here, right? We're not paying interest. If they have an annual fee of, let's say, $800, which some of these might, are you going to get more than $800 of benefits? Like, is it going to be that worth it for you? If it's not, then I don't know if we bother doing it, So that's kind of where I stand on it. So I want you to check out that article just so that you can compare them. Just see, it's good for us to educate ourselves, right? Just see generally, is this just really hype? I don't have one personally, just in case anyone's interested. I look at I definitely just look at like, what am I going to get out of it? If the benefit doesn't exceed the cost, then I don't want it. So that's what I would do. I would check that out. Okay.
Thank you.
Really good question. Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone else? Let me see if I think I may have missed a question. Hold on one second, guys. Let me. Okay, I have 2 more questions. Does it do anything to your credit score if you pay your credit card as soon as what you purchased it, posted date, or a few days before your closing date? Okay, so basically what they're asking is, what if you just pay off your credit card the same day that you use it, Cindy? Or like, should I wait a couple days? Or like, is there a formula to it? There kind of is. See, there's nothing wrong with you paying off your credit card the same day. Sometimes I've done that with some purchases that I'm like, I just need to pay it. I want to make sure that that's done. Ideally though, you want to wait until it's posted. Remember what I said? Swipe, post, pay. And the reason why is because once it's posted, that means that you know that the information has been sent to the credit bureaus, right? It's showing the credit bureaus that you're using the credit cards. What you don't want is the credit card company to only tell the credit bureaus that you're at 0% utilization, 0. You're like, but Cindy, I thought that was good and you're debt free. So like technically well, yeah, but at any given point, I do have something, right? Some type of utilization is being reported. Why? Because you want to show them that you are using your credit cards. You want to show them that you are good at managing debt. So I would say to make sure that it gets posted to your balance. But once you get that statement, oh, you already know the deal. You pay it off. You pay it off in full. That's the key, in full. You do not say, oh, I'm gonna just do the minimum payment. No. You look at how much you're supposed to pay back and you send that payment over to them. Good question. All right, last two questions is there a cost to owning credit cards if you make all your payments in time? Yes, there is, if there's an annual fee. Yeah, if there's an annual fee. So you know that credit card that I told you about just now, the Chase credit card, the fee is $95 a year. It's $95 a year. And you're like, Cindy, but like, I thought you said you don't like fees. Yes, but I'm getting a $1,000 travel credit. First of all, that's flexible, that I can use with numerous airlines, right? It's not just like one airline, but also even after that, every year I get about $300 automatically of travel credits and rewards. So it's worth it. The $95 is worth it there. Okay. So that would be a cost that you can look into. But in order to determine exactly how much your credit cards are costing you, please make sure you go to your statement, your credit card statement, because it'll say it there. And the last question is, can apartment rent payments be used to improve credit score? So that's an iffy one. You see, typically, no. The reason why is because a bill like rent, like your utilities, etc., is not debt. It's not debt. It's just you paying. However, I'm going to show you something really quick, guys. This is my last question for the day, so I think it's a good one to end on. There is something called Experian Boost. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of that. The Experian Boost actually allows you to use certain things like your phone bill, your utilities, your Netflix bill, and you can use it to help boost your credit score. So that's a good option to have. However, what's not included in that is rent. Okay. It depends. I would look it up. My rent has never been posted to my credit report at all. If you default on your rent and you don't pay that debt back, yes, that will get reported to you on your credit report. So traditionally the answer is no. I've never had that. I would just look into it. But even if that's not an option for you, I would look into this credit, the credit boost that Experian offers, because that could be a good option for you to look into. Okay. So yeah, so with that said, everyone, thank you again so much for having me. It's been a true honor to be invited. I want to thank Nora for, just reaching out and connecting. And, I really hope that you gained a lot from this. The reason why I do this is always about my community. I wish somebody could have just broken down these concepts for me when I was younger, and so now I try to do that. Hopefully I can come back and we can, talk about other topics, any financial topics you want to talk about. I'm here. I love talking about money. Follow me on Instagram at Zero-Based Budget. Also, feel free to DM me. Just make sure that at the very, one of the first things that you say is that we spoke here, right? Because I always prioritize the students that I've personally engaged with over, the other hundreds of DMs that I'll receive in a day. So just make sure that you do that and just stay connected. I think it's really important to have these conversations about money, and I hope you gained a lot out of this presentation. So thank you once again.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Cindy. I know lots of us, there are lots of students who joined who benefited on Monday and today as well. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to educate us and help us. But like Cindy said, once again, go ahead. I think I put her Instagram in the chat at one point. But we can also share her on our Instagram story just in case you guys want to do give her a follow. So make sure to go ahead and do that. And then we're just going to continue on with our opportunity drawing that Maria's going to lead. I think I might have froze, but so Cindy, thank you so much once again. And then Maria's going to go on with the opportunity drawing.
Hello, everyone. I'm not sure if everybody signed up yet for